discussing why invest in real estate. And I know some of you on this call personally have invested before. I know some of you have talked about investing, and I know some of you represent investors as real estate agents. And I know some of you on this call want to represent more investors. So we're going to talk about all things real estate investing with this PowerPoint. Feel free at any time to ask questions, and we want to make this very collaborative, very participatory. All right, first, why invest in real estate? Number one, we can improve real estate's value. You can't do that with stocks, bonds, gold, etc. So, for example, if you invest in Kroger stock and you buy $500 worth of Kroger stock, you can do personally nothing to help improve that stock price. Sure, you can say, well, I can go shop at Kroger, etc. But realistically, you cannot alter the trajectory of how much that stock makes. You can improve real estate's value by a number of things: cosmetics, paint, redoing kitchens, bathrooms. I knew a guy once that his niche in real estate investing was buying homes, and he would add an addition onto every home and he would flip it for no more or no less than $100,000 from what he bought it for. So there's so many different ways to improve real estate's value. And again, you can't do that with stocks, bonds, gold, etc. Number two, this is one of the biggest ones that again, we're going to talk about this in the future of this PowerPoint about building your team, but the tax consequences of investing in real estate are so substantial. And for those of you on this call that have invested in real estate and you have a good CPA, you should know exactly what I'm talking about here. You get to write off everything from depreciation, cell phone use, mileage to and from Lowe's, mileage to and from the property, any purchases for that rental property, meals, clothing, office supplies, internet, property taxes, insurance, mortgage. There's so many different ways to get write-offs for having that piece of real estate investment. Number three, you're going to see this theme throughout. It's the simplest, most reliable, and consistent way to build wealth. And that is a excerpt straight from the classic book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It acts as a savings account. So think about this. Instead of putting away $100 every month into a savings or checking account, real estate appreciates in value every year. Now, you can look from before the Great Depression up until 2023, and real estate goes up and to the right on a graph. Now, within that, you are going to have your downturns. You know, most of us were in real estate when the recession of 2008, 9, 10 happened. So, yes, sometimes the value goes down, but far and away, over and over, throughout pretty much the last 100 years, real estate's going up in value. So that acts like a savings account as well. Number five, I love this. Real estate buildings are much easier to manage buildings rather than people. Buildings don't call in sick. They don't ask for raises. They don't take days off, vacation, etc. Buildings work for us 365 days a year, and that's known as the wealthy mentality. This was a book written by Greg War about multifamily. And you'll see that I reference books a lot because that's how I've learned a lot about real estate investing, is reading and getting ideas from people. But for anybody on this call that's ever had a job outside of real estate where you had to manage people, I think this statement will stick with you because it is much easier to manage buildings than people. And when you get to manage the buildings, all you have to do is give them some TLC, and you know they're going to be there 365 days a year for you. Financing. There's all types of financing. There's so many more than what I've listed here, but you can have government-backed financing. You can have hard money lenders, private financing. So you can go to a family member and get financing to buy a rental property or a flip. Seller financing, you could go to sellers and ask them to finance the property and you make payments to them just like they're the bank. And then sub two is something that's really come along in the last couple years, and that's spearheaded by a man named Pace Morby. I've got a couple of his books, podcasts. He's all over the place. But subject to is where you can acquire a piece of real estate subject to you making payments to the bank that owns the property. So therefore, a lot of people got very low interest rates in 2020, 21, 22, but now they are in issues, debt for whatever reason. And so you can actually make an offer to purchase their place subject to you taking over their existing mortgage. And there's actually a company based out of Louisville, Kentucky, that you make your monthly payments to, and then they pay the bank straight from there. So therefore, you have a paper trail and receipts, so you know that the seller is not just banking the payment that you make. So it says we don't have to use our hard-earned money to invest. OPM, other people's money. I've got a client right now that's an investor, and he's bought a lot of rental property in the last few years, and he's a big proponent of OPM, other people's money, whether it's banks' money, anybody's money that they're willing to lend. Think about this: if you went to a bank and asked for a $100,000 loan so you could go buy Kroger stock, that bank's
you need an adult to get this down. Yeah.
Hello? Please mute yourself.
I just muted some folks, so you're good.
Perfect. So again, if you went to a bank to ask for a $100,000 loan to buy Kroger stock, they're going to laugh at you. But if you go to a bank and ask for a $100,000 loan to buy a piece of real estate, that happens every day, as you guys know, in the real estate world. So OPM is one of the most important things in real estate investing. And then finally, earn passive income for life. This is what many investors are looking for, is that monthly income every month, whether it's through a rental property, whether it's through a REIT, whether it's through a syndication, whether it's through any type of real estate investing, where you get that monthly income where you're not personally working hours in order to get that income. So in order to understand why to invest in real estate, you got to understand the three different types of income. So first, there's ordinary income. So if we have an employer, we get a check from that employer. At least 20% is taken out of our check due to ordinary income tax, highest amount of tax. Second, portfolio income. So if you have a portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, IRAs, etc., these are taxed at 20%. Again, that's a very hefty tax on this type of income. Number three, the best type of income is passive income, real estate rent. Not only is real estate rent the lowest tax as income, but we get to use the actual real estate as a tax write-off, and depreciation shelters any cash flow. So just remember, many of you might have heard on this call that the rules and laws of our country were written by rich old people, right? So that's why many rich old people invest or have invested or own lots of real estate, because then they're able to use the rules and regulations to benefit them when it comes to tax. All right, this is one of the most important slides. If you guys have never seen this slide, this is something I'd recommend taking a picture of. This is called the cash flow quadrant. So one of my favorite authors of all time, Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, his second book he wrote was called the cash flow quadrant. So look at this, 4 ways to produce income. If you're an employee, you have a JOB. That means the amount of active work that you do determines your income. So time equals money. Then underneath the E quadrant is the S quadrant, which means self-employed. That means you don't have a job, but you own a job. but still the amount of active work determines your income. So again, an S is kind of like an E, where the amount of work is going to be dictated about on the amount of income you bring in. Now go to the top right quadrant, B, business owner. So you own a system. So the income does not depend on your active work. The income depends on the system and the leadership you provide to the people that work under you. And the people that work under you is what creates your money, your income over time. And then the bottom right quadrant is the investor. So you own investments. So income does not depend on your active work. You could sleep at night and guess what? You're still getting paid. Your money works for you. That's why Rich Dad Poor Dad's whole second book called The Cash Flow Quadrant was specifically geared towards this photo right here that you're looking at, because it's so important to understand the difference between an employee, self-employed, a business owner, or an investor. And since this is about real estate investing, this is why it's important for you to understand this quadrant. And this is something you should share with your investors. As a real estate agent, you should be taking a picture or Googling this and share it with your investor or potential investors to get them to understand the importance of investing in real estate. All right. Take, for example, here, we have $100,000 to invest of our own cash that we saved up, our hard-earned money. If you buy $100,000 of stock, you own $100,000 worth of that stock. If you buy a rental property with $100,000 and it rents for $1,000 a month, but you get a tax deduction, which we talked about previously, and it appreciates by anywhere from 3 to 7% a year. In Southwest Ohio, according to reports in 2023, single-family homes increased by value 14 to 17%. So that's a large appreciation. Now, say you still have that stock in 10 years and it goes up 5% each year, which is the average since the 1950s. You're going to have a total of $150,000 and change. Take the rental property you bought, and now you multiply that $1,000 times 12 months a year, 12,000 gross, multiplied by 10 years is 120,000. Your house is also going to go up an average of 5%. So in 10 years, the house is worth 150 grand. Now you have that plus the cash, and that's not even taking into account raising the rent throughout those 10 years. So you can see the difference in money just in rental property versus stock. Now, this is a very basic scenario, not taking into account a lot of other variables. Now, let's talk about something important. The number one reason people don't invest in real estate. You've heard this all the time. You've heard Sally down the street, your brother-in-law. Everybody talks about wanting to invest in real estate. But the big question is, why don't they invest in real estate? And the answer is simple. Fear. Fear. People will talk about doing it. They'll even go so far as to looking at a rental property or a flip with an agent, but they never pull the trigger on investing. So many people that I know have talked about investing in real estate, but yet they never pull the trigger. They never get to the point where instead of dipping their toe in the water, they're jumping head first. And it's because fear. What I tell everybody when fear is overtaking them, fear can be brought down by education, your financial IQ, reading books, talking to people, networking. There's so much information and education out there on how to invest in real estate properly. Get a mentor in real estate investing, just like we have mentorships as real estate agents. Get a mentor as an investor. Overcome that fear by using education and knowledge. When you're educated and understand, you're going to be much in a better position to pull the trigger on getting your first property. Now, before you buy your first investment property, whether it's a single family rental home, whether it's a flip, whether it's a 20-unit apartment complex, build your team. I cannot stress this enough. Just like as a real estate agent, you have a team from your appraisers to your lenders to your title attorneys to your office staff. When you're an investor, build your team. Now, we're going to go through a list here. This is just some of the ones. Your LLC. Build your team, meaning build your LLC first and foremost. Now, what does this entail? There are companies out there. One great one's called Prime Corporate Services out of Utah, where they will literally walk you through how to create your first LLC. Now, most people think, well, I can just go to the state secretary and I can apply for an LLC there. Okay, great. But did you happen to know that there are a couple of states in the United States that if you set up your LLC there, such as Wyoming and Delaware, those are the most landlord-friendly LLC states in America. So if you actually go through and set up an LLC in Delaware or Wyoming, you're going to be extra protected than your LLC would in Ohio. A lot of people don't realize that. So that's why it's important to have your teammates looking out for you and how to structure your LLC correctly. Then once you get your LLC set up, you've got your bank. Now, when I talk about bank, I'm talking about the bank that you're going to have your checking accounts, your business checking accounts, your credit cards, your debit cards, everything that's set up so you can have a paper trail with any money coming into that account and any money leaving that account. I urge you, talking to many CPAs, never ever commingle your funds between your personal checking account and your LLC's checking account. Meaning you've got a car payment coming up that you purchased a car and have a $300 monthly payment, and you just take $300 out of your LLC to transfer it to your personal checking to pay that bill. There are appropriate ways to withdraw money from your LLC to deposit into your personal account. But you've got to be very careful, and that's why you talk to your bank and your CPA on how to do that correctly. Your lender. Now, the lender is going to be different than a bank that you do your day-to-day banking business with. You're going to have multiple lenders on your team. So, for example, I've got lenders that I use that are very good with single-family home or units 4 and under. So I've got multiple loans with First National Bank. They are great when it comes to single-family homes, duplexes, up to 4 family. But once you get over a 4 family, you leave the residential world in terms of lending and you go into commercial real estate, which is a different animal. And so I've found a couple of different lenders that are much more likely to work in the gray area of lending when it comes to acquiring 5 units or more in terms of multifamily property. So you're going to want to vet lenders. You're going to want to have multiple lenders depending on the type of property you buy. Contractors, just like as a real estate agent, you need contractors for your clients. You're going to want to have contractors for your team, whether that's for your fix and flips, whether that's for your long-term rentals, your short-term rentals. Contractors are going to be of the utmost importance that they can get over to a job quickly and get the issue fixed, whether you have a tenant in there or you're flipping. Property management. A lot of people don't go into real estate investing because they don't want to get the proverbial 2:00 a.m. phone call. Oh, I've got a leaky pipe or the toilet won't flush. Well, I'll tell you guys this. I've been investing in real estate since 2004, and I've never received a call at 2 a.m. by a tenant telling me that the toilet won't flush. That is usually an excuse by somebody that doesn't want to invest in real estate or did invest in real estate but didn't qualify the tenants correctly. So if you don't want to deal with that, if you don't want to deal with tenants and finding tenants and their phone calls, hire property management. You know, ERA's got a great property management team in Columbus, Cincinnati, Florida. I'm one in Cleveland. So there's property management all over the place that you guys can use ERA's property management to manage your own properties if you don't want to manage them yourself. An attorney. No matter what in real estate investing, at some point you're going to need a real estate attorney that you can trust. So that is somebody that you want to build as part of your team. And then finally of this list, a CPA. So just a quick story. I used a certain CPA in Cincinnati from 2000 till about 2023. Unfortunately, he passed away last year. So I had to switch to a new CPA who's actually coming in to present next Thursday at our Liberty sales meeting. But anyway, these CPAs work specifically with real estate investors, independent contractors, real estate agents, etc. I loved my previous CPA, and I really think he did a good job. But I quickly realized when I went to this new CPA that there are a lot of things in the real estate investing world that I was not fully getting the best service or the best write-offs in tax shelter and all those good things. So it's very important to find a good CPA that understands real estate investing and all the advantages that come with it. All right, really quick, I'm going to go through kind of my story here because my story has been all over the place when it comes to real estate investing. Just a quick disclaimer, you probably can understand by now, but I love real estate investing. I love real estate. I love everything that goes into it. I'm going to be investing in real estate for most of the rest of my life. But it all started in 2004 when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That book was given to me by somebody, and I read it. And within a couple months of reading that was back in the day where they were giving away 100% loans for non-owner occupied, pretty much to anybody with a heartbeat. And for those of you old enough on this call that have been in real estate since then, you remember in the early 2000s when they were just handing loans to everybody. So I got my first loan, I got my first rental property, and I'll never forget the first time in that kitchen when the tenant gave me a check for the first month's rent and the security deposit, and how happy I was that I was making $250 a month. And again, I go back and read for the last 20 years, I go back and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad every January to start my year. And I can't say enough good things about it. If you haven't read the book, pick it up today, start reading it. If you have read the book, I'd recommend going back in and reading it again, because every time I read it, I learn something new. I'm at a different place in my life where a certain chapter will make sense. So it's just an incredible read. So what I first started doing when in my real estate journey, you got to learn how to run the numbers. This is so very important. I teach all of our interns, I teach our new agents at the Liberty office if they want to learn how to run the numbers. I would do this for fun for hours at night. This is one of the most important things that you can learn to do as a real estate investor. Now, this is just a quick example of a duplex that I ran the numbers on a couple of years ago. And when you run the numbers, you're looking at the inside of the property on whether it is going to be a viable acquisition for you or not. So the rule of thumb goes, you're going to run numbers on about 100 properties. You're going to put an offer in on about 10 properties in that you actually see. You walk 10 properties. Then out of those 10 properties, you might get one offer accepted. And you got to get really good at understanding the numbers and running the numbers. There's some great calculators out there. Bigger Pockets has a great calculator online that you can use. I use Excel spreadsheets still. You're going to just, depending on what type of property it is, you're going to have a duplex, single family, 4-family. It can be up to 100 unit, but you're going to have the basic numbers. You're going to have the number of units. You're going to have the list price. You're going to have what you plan on putting down, closing costs, all the expenses listed, your revenue, any laundry income, any parking revenue, any pet revenue. All that stuff goes into running the numbers. if anyone on this call wants to get together for just a one-on-one and learn how to run the numbers from scratch, I'm more than happy to do that. I always start off showing people how to run the numbers on a single family home. And then I use something called renometer.com, which is a great app in order to verify what current rents are in a certain location. But then I work, once they get the single family, I work them up to a duplex. Then we go to a 4-family. Then we'll go up to, a 25 unit so they can get practice for running the numbers. So what I did is I bought a couple of single family homes for the first few years using other people's money. And then in about 2006 or 7, I always wanted to get into multifamily. So this is a picture of a building that I bought in 2007. It's a 6-unit. Each unit was 3 beds, 1 bath. And I say here in the title that I got a master's degree in real estate investing because I absolutely fell on my face with this investment. This was the worst investment I've ever made in my life. It cost me 2 years of stress, bad health, poor relationships, and it cost me a little over $40,000. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I think it's important to share that anybody in real estate investing is going to learn. I didn't have a mentor. I was trying to learn on my own. I tried to manage this property on my own. It was just an absolute nightmare, and I was in way over my head. And luckily, I was able to sell it after 2 years. Like I said, I lost $40,000 on this investment. I lost health, stress. But what I lost in those areas, I gained what I would call a master's degree in real estate investing. For example, nobody ever told me to call the police station of a property that you are looking to acquire for an investment. If I would have called the local police department of where this building's located in Cincinnati, Ohio, I would have never bought the property, and it would have saved me money, time, headaches, etc. So I went from investing in single family homes, which I had a good grasp of. I had a good grasp of the numbers, and I wanted to jump into multifamily. That's where I thought the money was. And unfortunately, it did not go well. And like I said, I'm talking about my experiences, good and bad, just to share with you what happens in real estate. Sometimes it doesn't go like you wanted, but you know what? I could have chose to quit real estate investing in 2008 or 9 when I sold this building, but I was determined. I was determined to learn from this and make every other real estate investment better. And I can honestly say every real estate purchase since this building has gone well for me because I learned so much on this flop of a building here. Always, 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 I urge you guys, trust me, personal experience, talk with your spouse, talk with your significant other, make sure they are on board with you investing in real estate. From personal experience, unfortunately, my first marriage did not work out. I'm not going to ever regret my first marriage because I have a beautiful daughter because of that. But one of the biggest issues that my ex-wife and I fought about, just like this picture shows, is that she did not understand real estate investing. And I wanted to be a real estate investor. I wanted to get into real estate full time. And she wanted me to have a W-2 job like she did. She didn't want us to have tenants. She wanted us to work for 30 some years and then get a retirement package, whatever. That just wasn't for me. So again, I urge you, if you don't own rental property and you're looking to get in and you have a significant other or a spouse, make sure they're on board. So I am, for those of you that don't know, I am happily married right now and have a family of 4 of us. But before I got married a second time, I sat my current wife down and I actually showed her a PowerPoint presentation I created for her. I spent hours on this, on why I am investing in real estate, why I have rental properties, the importance of it. And I tell you what, it was great. She was like, thank you for doing this. She was like, I didn't know anything about real estate investing. Now I do. She even had a couple of questions for me, how it works. And she's been on board with me, and I'll say us now, her and I, investing in real estate from then on. So what's funny is I tell this story to people, and I've had multiple people ask me for that PowerPoint presentation so they could then tweak it to their spouse or their significant other, just so they can get them on board with investing. All right, going along with my story here, this was a rental property I bought. The reason I want to show this is what can happen in real estate. So I bought it in 2004 for $96,000. This was the one I bought after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. As of 2024, so 20 years later, the RPR estimate is $242,000 on this house. It's currently renting for $1,300 a month, and there's roughly $145,000 in home equity. So the tenant that I got into this house in 2004, believe it or not, is still into that house 20 years later. So I've added it up before, and they've paid me well over, it's like $230,000 over 20 years to live in this house. Now, if you look on the right, you'll see, well, Dan, why is there 27 years left on the mortgage if you bought it in 2004? It's because an investing strategy you can use is my tenants paid down my mortgage so much, and when the interest rates dropped so low in 2021, 22, I did a cash out refinance on this property. I took a chunk of money out, got a 30-year loan again on it, and then I used that money that I pulled out to buy another investment property that was cash flowing. So that's using the equity in the house in order to buy more investment property. So that's one of the many investing strategies out there. Another one I picked up along the way, these are just a few, was I bought this duplex. As you can see, I love brick ranches. Brick ranches are so sexy. They're like tanks. They are the best rental properties out there. So brick ranches are my bread and butter. I love them. That's why these are just a few of the handful of brick ranches that I have. But I bought this one in 2019 for $110,900. And now RPR estimates, as of a couple days ago, it's worth $201,000. Each side is being rented for $1,800. We're actually, or $1,600 total. We're actually going to raise that to $850 each side, so it's going to go up to $1,700 a month. But this one has $134,000 in equity in just 5 years. So it's quite amazing when you get your hands on that property, what it can do. Not only cash flow every month, but the fact that your tenants are paying down your mortgage while your property is increasing in value. And that's how you really increase your net worth. All right, so as I was doing this, my dream all along since my first investment property was to own large apartment complexes. But that is a whole different animal in of itself. I failed miserably when I tried to buy a 6-unit. So what made me think that I could buy something bigger and succeed? Well, that's where I created a partnership. And my dream was realized in 2022 when I finally bought an apartment complex, 20 units. And the reason I was able to make this work is because I was very particular about my partners. One partner was wealthy. He had the assets. He had everything for us to get a loan, no problem. And the other partner that I brought in was a property manager who can manage the property. So the three of us went in together and bought this 20 unit, which was, again, it was a dream of mine to get something this big and just get my foot in the door in what we would call larger multifamily. So what we ended up doing is what's called a 1031 tax exchange. If any of you were on the in the Zoom call we had with Brian from IBX, he did a great Zoom presentation on 1031 tax exchange. So a 1031 is really a tax break. That's when you can sell a property held as an investment, and you swap it for a new one that you purchased for an investment property, and you defer any capital gains tax on the sale. So pretty much what you do is you have to buy something that is more expensive than the one that you sold for. So that's what we did. We sold this property and we did a 1031 tax exchange. So any money we made off the previous 20 unit, we didn't have to pay capital gains tax. Proceeds from the sale must be held in escrow by a third party. So you cannot hold this money in your bank account or it gets taxed. Then the third party disperses this money to your new property at closing. If you receive any money from them, even temporarily, you get capital gains tax on that money, and it defeats the whole purpose of the 1031 tax exchange. The properties being exchanged must be considered like kind in the eyes of the IRS. So, for example, you can't sell a 20-unit apartment complex and do a 1031 into a duplex. Those are not considered like kind properties. You also aren't going to be able to sell a single family home that's a rental property and 1031 it into a 40-unit apartment complex, because that's going from residential to commercial. So the properties have to be what's considered like kind. And again, if you have any more questions or want to talk in detail, I can give you more examples of how mine went and what I learned through the 1031. If used correctly, there's no limit on how frequently you can do 1031s. So as long as you are selling constantly, if you just buy one property, you fix it up, you sell it as an investment, you can 1031 that into a more expensive one. And then a year later, you can 1031 it again and again, and you can keep doing that over and over. And as long as you keep using the 1031, all capital gains tax is deferred on that. Another thing that I would highly recommend you look into when you buy your first investment property is what's called a cost segregation study. So a couple of months ago, I had a man by the name of Lee Shrive, and he was from Texas. He's the one that I used for a cost segregation study on one of my properties, and he gave us about a 45-minute presentation on the cost seg. And let me tell you, it works. My taxes were completely different in 2022 and will be in 2023 because of running the cost seg study. So what this is it examines each property, but it accelerates your depreciation for the building. So typically, if you bought a residential property, you would be at a 27.5-year depreciation, where you would get, it would be broken up over that time frame. If you buy a commercial property, your depreciation happens on a 39-year timeline. Well, guess what? Remember, the rules and laws were written by rich old people. Rich old people realized a few years ago that, you know what? We don't hold all of our properties for 27.5 years or 39 years. So we're missing out on this depreciation. So what a cost segregation study does is it shortens the tax lives for these components, such as flooring, windows, fencing, lighting, appliances, sidewalks, you name it. They even will put a price on your baseboard, the amount of baseboard in your building, and they will put a price on that. So therefore, you get to see these tax implications in a positive way the first year that you do the cost seg. And guess what? If it is so great and you can't use all that money in 1 year as far as your tax savings, it rolls over into the next year and the next year and the next year. It is an incredible tool to help you build financial wealth, the cost segregation study. All right, this one is a self-directed IRA for investing. Wayne, you have done this before. I have not. So I'm going to let you take over and talk a little bit about the self-directed IRA.
Perfect. So just another, well, first of all, Dan, this has been great and can clearly see the passion, which makes it even more energizing for us listening. So that it's been great. But just another way, another option for purchase. And this has worked for me personally and has worked for me to get clients, investor clients, because they don't maybe know about it. Kind of the simple version is if you have access to retirement funds. So if you started your own account, just at Fidelity, wherever, if you had a job and there was a 401k, and when you left, they say, hey, you gotta transfer it somewhere. If you have access to retirement funds, what you can do is transfer them to a self-directed IRA. It's a legitimate finance, fund manager. They're billions and billion-dollar corporation. The one I use, at least. So you just say, hey, I got $100,000 in a retirement. You move it to this self-directed IRA. In the self-directed IRA, you can invest in stock, mutual funds. You can loan it to people. But one of the options is you can buy real estate with it. So what happens is you go look at a property, it's $100,000. You say, I want it, I'll pay cash. So the IRA is technically buying the property. So the contract says, Equity Trust IRA, custodian, Wayne Weaver. So you're able to do a cash deal with whatever money you have. And at closing, the deed is in the IRA's name. And then technically you have it at that point. So from that point on, rent goes into the IRA. And when you go to pay the electric bill or the water bill or whatever, it comes out of the IRA. So everything is in and out of the IRA. So when Dan talked earlier about capital gains and just trying to, not get away with stuff, but just, I want to be careful with my money and whatever I can do, to pay less taxes. So let's just say Dan mentioned he bought a property for $100,000. It's worth 250 now. If Dan sold that today, all 250 would go back in the IRA and there would be zero tax consequences, none whatsoever. He doesn't have to reinvest it. He doesn't have to do anything. That money goes back into the IRA. So now the IRA had 100 and now it's got 250. And, the idea is that you are taxed on that when you pull it out. You're not taxed on anything that happens in your retirement funds, until you pull something out. So that's kind of the idea of being able to, kind of take advantage of it. So just a simple story that I'm working on right now is I'm working on some apartment buildings, probably about 600,000 for 4 of them. Could be a little bit more, but I'm not spending $600,000. I don't have $600,000 just to buy them. Could go get a mortgage. So what I've done is I've actually talked to the folks. We're going to seller finance. So I'm actually just going to pull money out of my IRA for the down payment. All the deeds are going to go in the IRA. So the deed will literally own 4 properties. And the ideal goal is all my calculations show, of course, if everything goes not perfect, if it goes according to plan, is in 8 years, the IRA will have accepted more money than it's paid out, and the properties will be paid off without a penny out of my pocket. Because, obviously, if you're going to buy something, the rents better be more than the expenses. So including the mortgage back to the seller, we're going to, so the ideal thing is I'm going to spend probably 75 on a down payment. Hopefully in 8 years, the IRA is worth 800,000. And through all that time, I've made, let's say, Dan's numbers, 1,000 a month for 4 properties. That's $4,000 times, 12 months times 8, so there's a lot there that, that you kind of think of. So just knowing that all of that's going to be sort of dealing with the IRA and not out of pocket and stuff. So that's the basic self-directed IRA. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to, share the info, share the company I deal with. certainly get you more info. But just another way to to use other people's money, but it's really yours. But it's not something you have access to unless you're investing something similar to this. So that's it.
And also with that, I have the self-directed IRA for investing in real estate as well. There are some IRS rules where you can use financing, part financing inside of this for obtaining the investment property, but it does get extremely complicated, and your documents have to be written to allow for that. But the other thing too is what you can do is, if I have, whatever amount, let's just say, 300,000 in my, IRA account, somebody else has 200,000, somebody else has 100,000. Those people can get together and create a partnership and have a percentage of ownership based upon the amount of money that they acquired the property with. And so you can, even if you don't have enough money to purchase the property outright, you can partner up with some other people and accomplish the same thing. But again, you need a third-party custodian to set it up, set up the LLC, and it's not as complicated and tricky. I mean, there are companies out there that will go ahead and handle the paperwork for you and act as a custodian for the purchase and the sale of these properties as well.
Awesome. Yeah, good info, Ron. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Wayne. All right, let's finish off here. We got a few more minutes, some great quotes. No matter what you think about his politics, Donald Trump is a genius when it comes to real estate. And he once said in one of his books, "I've always felt very secure and safe with real estate because it always appreciates in value." Andrew Carnegie, 90% of all millionaires becomes through owning real estate. If you do not like real estate, all you have to do is make hamburgers, build a business around that hamburger and franchise it. That was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, based on Ray Kroc, who didn't own burger restaurants. He owned real estate. And this is one of my favorite of all times. Landlords grow rich in their sleep. Think about that one. Landlords grow rich in their sleep. So with my wife and I, our retirement's rental properties. As Warren Buffett says here, everyone talks about diversify, diversify, diversify. Put all your eggs into one basket and watch that basket very closely. And, that's just what I'm doing. I'm not saying that's the right way. I'm not saying it's the wrong way. I'm just saying that I don't personally believe in stocks and bonds. And I still think that Wall Street's always going to win before I am. So my hard-earned money, everything that I go into, my knowledge, I eat, sleep, and breathe. I'm in the real estate business. So I invest in real estate because that's going to be our retirement is rental properties. I'm not counting on the government to take care of me. I'm not counting on anything else. So that is what our retirement looks like. All right. Anybody have any questions about anything that we discussed here during this Zoom call? I know that was a lot of information within an hour.
Hey, Dan is very good. You explain very good. We understand more now. I'm doing real estate investment for a long time, but I get more clear picture after listening to you. Thank you.
So let me ask you guys this. How can you as real estate agents acquire more investors as part of your clientele? Because we shared the statistic in 2022, 1 out of every 4 single family homes was bought by an investor. So think about it. How can you guys as real estate agents get more investors as clients?
I like to invite one day at a Camper office or Liberty office with few investors with a lunch meeting, and you can explain more detail and we get together. I think that would be better.
Yep, we can definitely do that. How many of you on the call have ever gone to a local real estate investors association meeting? I'd highly recommend it. I know all the
I-
big cities have it.
I attend every monthly meeting at the RIA in Cincinnati.
That's a great place to meet investors.
I
Hey,
think
Dan,
it's
this is
important to
Latoya
consider-
Dunn. I have a question, and I came into the meeting late, so if you guys discussed it, I apologize. But what about investments in trust? Did you all talk about that? I'm sorry, I came in late.
No, thanks, Latoya. We didn't go into the REITs and trust. That is definitely a whole other topic that we could get into. 1 hour is just not enough time to discuss everything there is in real estate investing. One book I read recently, the author said one of the problems with making money in real estate is there's so many different ways to invest that all too often people don't focus and get good at one thing. They spread it out. They try to do so many different things well that they cannot do one thing very well. So that's what we're looking for as far as we didn't get to the trust, but that's a whole nother thing, Latoya. I'd be more than happy to meet with you and talk more about how you can invest in trust.
Yeah, the one thing
One other
about,
thing, you had stated, how do we go about getting investors? I just got back into this, but one of the things that I tell people all the time is you turn nothing down. I don't care if a listing is 500. I don't care if it's $1 million. I've got most of my investors by taking those small deals that has increased my business, that most of my business was based off referrals from my investors.
I love that, Latoya. I got a book right here called Retire Young, Retire Rich from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He talks about in this book, always say yes. Say yes and figure it out. Just like you said, say yes and figure it out. So I love that.
Yeah, this has been great, Dan. And for everyone else, we are happy to do, another call. We can, talk about this more. We could have a, I guess investing a 201 session, whatever. But, definitely, kind of letting you guys know, just we kind of threw a lot at you, but, it's not a one and done thing. We're happy to continue this conversation for sure.
yeah, I think it's great information, Dan. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all for jumping on the call today. Hopefully you learned just one thing from this, and feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to talk further about anything when it comes to real estate investing. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
Bye.